Welcome and thanks for joining me. I'm Coach Al. I'm sure it makes sense to you that there'd be a number of recurring themes in the work that I do as a coach. Whether I'm reviewing video for a virtual gait analysis, working one-on-one with an athlete, or designing a program like this, one of the most important of these recurring themes is core stability. And along with it, hip stability and strength, and the word integration, which I use over and over again. Sometimes we can hear these terms and these concepts, and on the surface we understand them. But what I want for you is a deeper, more profound understanding of what these concepts mean, so you can really internalize them and take them and apply them directly in your training. One of the most empowering things that we can develop is that understanding, because when we know why we're doing an exercise and what it really means and how it applies to our running or to our training, we can get much more from that exercise. So yeah, I can say, hey, core stability is to stop or control motion in one place in the presence of motion somewhere else. But what does that really mean? In this video, I'm going to show you some actual runners. We're going to look at a runner who's unstable, a runner who is stable. We're going to compare the two and look in detail at what the differences are. My goal for you is to take some of these concepts and start to really internalize them and understand them and apply it to your own training. Sometimes a picture or video is worth 1,000 words. And that's what my hope is today. So, let's get started. So we're going to look at a group of 4 runners. I want you to look at these young ladies. What do you see? Focus on them from a running perspective only. Notice their foot mechanics are different. Their arm carriage is a little different. But I want you to focus in on the middle of their body, around the pelvic and hip girdle. We know that what happens above and below is impacted by what happens in the middle. So let me ask, what are you learning about these runners as you watch them run? It's likely they come from different training backgrounds, have different skill levels, certainly a different talent level. We're all unique, we're all different, we're all an experiment of one. Yet for our purposes today, I want to focus on the 2 runners to the right of this group. One is quite stable and the other is much less so. Let's take a deeper look and see if we can see what's happening. I'm going to slow the video down and we're going to focus on the runner second from the right in the blue top. Zero in on her hips. Can you see the motion of her entire pelvic girdle as she lands on a single leg? She lands on the left and the right hip drops significantly. Similarly on the other side. Notice the twisting in her spine, the complete lack of integration of the top and bottom halves of her body. This is core and hip instability in a nutshell. Let's move away from that video for a second and look at 2 other runners where we can see a similar degree of core and hip instability on a single leg. Let's focus in on the runner to the right. What do you see here? It's very obvious that there's a disconnect between the upper and lower halves of the body. The spine is twisting, the hips are dropping. Imagine the stress on all of the muscles of the hip girdle, in the low back, in the hamstring, in the low leg. All of these muscles trying to compensate for a lack of this integration and a lack of connection. All of these tissues stressed to try to control movement where it shouldn't be, to create more stiffness and integration in areas where it should be. So let's return to our original video. I want to give you a second to look at this again. The instability should now be much more obvious to you. You're looking at this now through a different lens. You can now see some things you couldn't see before. Now let's look at a very stable runner. I want you to zero in on the runner all the way to the right with the gray top. What do you notice as you watch her run, especially around the middle? Let's look at the video again and really slow it down. Notice that as she lands on a single leg, the upper and lower halves of her body remain connected and integrated. The core, the trunk, is truly taking care of itself. The hips remain stable and strong. Everything working as a single unit. Yeah, she's got a lot of vertical oscillation in her stride. That could be better. We can also see she's a little bit less stable on the right than on the left. But certainly she remains much more integrated than does her running friend to her right.
So you may be asking yourself, how do you achieve the results of the more stable runner on the right? I'll answer that question this way. First, accept that you run the way you run from the inside out, not the outside in. These aren't changes that can be made by altering technique or form. They have to happen from within. Secondly, the way that you build stability and strength as a runner is in a progressive manner. Start at the beginning with this program and build progressively through all three levels. You can't make conscious changes while you run that alter your stability. There's too many things happening at one time. The only way to build a stable and strong chassis is progressively, from the beginning, from the ground up, through progressing and advancing levels of training.
To summarize, as we're looking at these videos and starting to understand what's happening and comparing one runner to another, what we want to do is begin to apply these concepts to our own training. Think about how doing an exercise like the vertical quadruped speaks specifically to these skills of stability and integration. Ignore the differences in terms of each one of these runners' morphologies or makeup. What we've got to focus on is what each of us can do as an individual to be better, to be more integrated. When tissues are stressed beyond their capability, injury is likely. When things are integrated and every part is doing what it is supposed to do, what it's designed to do, then the likelihood of injury is reduced. That's our goal.